Hello, and thank you for joining us for another Angel Capital Group Fireside Chat. It's Wednesday, July 20th. I'm Scott Ewing, and I'm with Jeff Hammock, CEO and founder of MechOptix from Madison, near Huntsville, Alabama. Jeff, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Scott.
I have a problem, Jeff. My younger daughter has an unfortunate history of following too closely behind other vehicles. She's 21 years old, and she's already been involved in 3 rear-end collisions. And to be fair, some years ago, I rear-ended a car in traffic on an interstate when it slowed suddenly, just as I was taking a side glance to check a sign. Twice before, my wife and I have been rear-ended. So based on my family's experience, rear-end collisions, I'm sorry to say, are too common. So tell us how your company, MechOptix, is out to keep us all from suffering rear-end collisions.
Well, I'm not happy to hear that you've had probably a few more experiences than average, but it is a typical problem, especially now that there are so many more cars on the road. We have so many things that distract us while we're driving. But one of the fundamental issues, and it's something that we've attacked at MechOptix, is the brake light only comes on when the vehicle operator applies the brakes. I mean, the fact that we call it a brake light dates back to the advent of this light, which is about 100 years ago, when they first put a switch behind a brake pedal and put a light on the rear of the vehicle. What we should be doing to reduce the number of rear-end collisions is indicating that our vehicle is slowing down. If it's slowing down at a rapid enough rate, the following driver should get that information via the light. It should come on. So what we're doing is measuring the vehicle deceleration all the time and illuminating the light on our own power within the lamp to indicate to the following driver that the vehicle is slowing down.
Well, several years ago, the National Transportation Safety Board released a study, and it showed that rear-end collisions account for nearly 2 million crashes each year, almost a third of the total number of highway wrecks. And those crashes were 12% of multi-vehicle fatal crashes. Commercial vehicles were involved in about 40% of these fatal rear-end collisions, even though commercial vehicles comprise only about 3% of the vehicles on the road and only cover about 7% of the miles traveled on the nation's highways. According to the NTSB study, the incidents of rear-end collision were increasing. You just mentioned more cars on the road, so it's getting worse. And so I should ask, what got you thinking about this problem and what led you to form MechOptix?
So the automatic brake light idea was a personal pain point for me. It was actually too many close calls. The one that really triggered the idea for a product was on a cross-country trip. I'm riding my motorcycle from Huntsville, Alabama to Washington, D.C. on Memorial Weekend. It was the second year in a row that I'd done so. It was back in 1996, if you can believe it was that long ago. I'd been married 1 year. My new bride followed me up there in a Jeep SUV. When I downshifted my motorcycle to slow down, which is what riders do to slow down, it's natural, effective, sounds great.
Right.
But the brake light doesn't come on because we're not applying a lever or a switch. Those close calls with her, and her being an electrical engineer, she's beating me up, hey, if you're such a smart guy, you're an optics guy, figure something out. So I looked at the problem, and in 1996, it was just a non-start. It would have been a pretty big box mounted on the outside of the bike that had everything you need inside it. And, then safety wasn't as paramount as it is now. It was more about appearance. So you fast forward, 2 things we've got working for us now. The technology that enables us to provide this product as a bulb swap, an automatic brake light based on a deceleration measurement. The enabling technologies come from the mobile device industry. The accelerometers, the microcontrollers, even the LEDs. The LED driver we use is very similar to the one that are in mobile devices. And then you couple that with the industry move, the culture move towards safety. I know how dangerous it is to be on my motorcycle. I know how dangerous it is in my passenger vehicle in traffic. I'm thinking, what can I change? And what technologies can I implement that will improve my safety and reduce my chances of collision?
Well, just behind us on that scenic view out there is a road called the Dragon that winds between Tennessee and Georgia, and we every week hear about a fatal or a tragic accident on that road from often just that problem. Jeff, we love talking about technology, but let's spend a moment talking about your team. Your website tells a story of how you have been an avid motorcyclist for years, and you started to work on the automatic brake light after your cross-country bike mishap or near bike mishap. But you aren't just a rider, you're a senior engineer with substantial background in optical sensor work. It shouldn't surprise us, with your being in Huntsville, that you've been involved with electronics programs for the U.S. government. Was MechOptix an extension of work you'd been doing for the Army or NASA or Missile Defense Agency?
I would describe it as a natural progression. So I think for those of us willing to take the plunge, if you can marry your experience with your passion, I think that's the true recipe for a successful entrepreneur, no matter what type of business that you're going into. I'm a gearhead. I mean, my personal email address is gearheadopticsguy, just so I can wrap it all up and make it plain for everyone. So in gearhead, I don't discriminate. I love muscle cars from Detroit. I love tuner cars from Asia. I love motorcycles. Basically anything that can go fast, I'm interested in it at some level. Taking that passion and marrying that to what I know about optics and sensors and instrumentation and power management, and noticing opportunities in power sports and automotive where we can implement some technologies to increase safety for the riders, for the passengers, manage the exposure for a trucking firm. All these become very interesting, and it's a great mesh of what I know how to do and what I like to do.
You're a true gearhead. And you have a co-designer who joined your company in 2014, Joe McGinty. His title on your website is Product Design, Development, and Manufacturing. But tell us about Joe's background and what he brings to your company.
So Joe's been my mentor, I think about 6 years now. Have lunch once a month, trade stories about whatever we're working on. Joe's had a lot of great experience. He's done the coin changer mechanism for all the payphones in British Telecom. He's also developed the Stinger missile guidance system. So you talk about a breadth of experience. And again, referencing Huntsville, you get these kind of mixes when people are really getting after it and in their profession and really getting things done. I would describe him as my co-designer. So the two of us can get from a concept on a scratch piece of paper or a napkin or a whiteboard to a working prototype in 6 to 8 weeks. And we do that because it's just a good marriage of our skills to get that done. I do the mechanical and the sourcing of parts and all the optics. He does the electronics design and the manufacturing side. And now we have something we can actually go and show someone. So what we learned, especially in the sensors and lighting market and automotive and in power sports, is seeing is believing. We need to show up with a product that looks very similar to the production level product, or there's no sale, there's no interest. They say, come back when you're ready to talk to us.
Bob Seaman is your Chief Financial Officer. Is Bob full-time, and what's his background?
So Bob is a partner in an accounting firm. I was actually introduced to him by Joe McGinty. Joe has 3 companies that are active now. Bob is his accountant for all of that effort. Bob is part-time with me. It's not really a full-time effort yet. We're just going to production now, so we haven't had a whole lot of CFO level activity. But he is on me about the books and structure and bringing people on with payroll and all that. So what's interesting about Bob is he has experience in electronics contract manufacturing. Oh. So he's not just a great accountant, not just a great finance guy. He's got experience with the production side, which will prove invaluable very soon.
And I know you have a couple of engineers on your roster, but before we focus on the R&D, tell us about your sales team and how you plan to market your product. Be specific. Who do you have on board? What are their responsibilities? And talk specifically about how you'll educate the market and build demand for your invention, and how you'll make sales in whatever channel you choose.
So I'm glad you used the word educate, because there is certainly an education piece to our automatic brake light technology. When you talk about a self-illuminating, self-powered automatic brake light that's a bulb swap, you take your bulb out, you put our smart lamp in, that is new enough and different enough that there's certainly an education piece that has to go along with that. Why do you need it? A little bit about how it works. You have to actually demonstrate that it does work, because it is a big pill to swallow. You're able to do all this in a small lamp package. The way that we're going after the market is very traditional. It's through manufacturing reps who have the big Rolodex, they've got the contacts in the industry, they've been doing it a while. So our power sports guy has been doing it for 45 years. That's JJ Hanfield. He's down in the Orlando area. He has sold product in power sports 45 years in the US and in Europe. He is dying to take this to Europe in October for our first motorcycle trade event. Brian Garcia is our manufacturing rep for heavy duty, which is what the industry calls trucking. Heavy duty includes not just tractor trailer trucks, but utility trucks, service fleets, the electrical or telephone company truck, garbage trucks, city buses. The great thing about those industries is they all pretty much use a 4-inch round or a 6-inch oval, so it makes it easy for us to provide a solution for that. We've basically got two flavors. Brian brings 20 years of experience, first in automotive aftermarket and then in fleet.
Okay, so now about products. Your first design patent was issued in August 2014 for a deceleration-triggered LED stop lamp. But I know that just last week, you filed a provisional patent application for an extension on that design to include a system specifically for bicycles and motorcycles. And I should add that you filed a provisional application for a brake light adapter for trucks. But about the bikes, MechOptix's StopTix is a fully automatic brake light that's designed to alert other motorists and cyclists when a bicycle is decelerating. StopTix doesn't require that the rider actually hit the brakes before triggering the taillight. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And is the StopTix bicycle or motorcycle light the first product your company intends to sell?
Yeah, so I want to make the distinction. We've got the motorcycle market, which is our target market for our first product, which is an automotive lamp.
Okay.
So dating back to my personal pain point as a motorcyclist, the key to this was making it easy to install and not change the look of the bike. The only way to do that really is as a bulb swap, and we did that. Since we did it as a bulb swap, you can also put it in a tow-behind trailer, a passenger vehicle, anything that takes that single socket lamp. That opens up all of automotive for us. That's the product that's in production now. It will be on the market in August. The new product immediately following that is the bicycle light.
Okay.
And it is different because it has a lithium-ion battery, micro USB port, single button operations, nice and sealed up for the weather, and it clamps on to your bicycle post. Same core technology, self-powered, deceleration triggered automatic brake light. The bicycle version is different because we needed to add bells and whistles like a flashing mode, tail light mode, or you can just turn all of that off and have brake only.
So am I correct that StopTix is the system that allows the 1187, the traditional bulb, 1157, to operate when it's decelerating? Is the bicycle system going to be called the same thing, or help me a little bit understand your naming concepts?
We're trying to continue the StopTix branding as the core technology.
Okay.
So StopTix is, we're self-powered, we're measuring, and we self-illuminate on deceleration. And we're trying to establish a brand within the market so that when you see StopTix, when you see an octagon-shaped lens on that light, you know it came from us, and we get to continue to build that brand.
Okay.
We want to be known as the automatic brake light company. Even though we've got more to do after automatic brake lights, that's what we're pushing for the next 18 to 24 months, the automatic brake light company. You can put that in vehicles, you can put it on your bicycle. You know when you see StopTix, it's our tech, you know what it does, it works.
So in your branding, your brand architecture, people may not know MechOptix as well as they know the name StopTix.
Right.
Similarly, you get a big commercial or consumer product company like Church & Dwight, you may know the name Arm & Hammer as a baking soda product, but you don't know the company behind it that has several other brands in their stable.
And I like it that way. And then we've taken it one step easier for the consumer. You don't have to remember my name, the company name. You don't even have to remember StopTix, although we would love for that to become a common brand name. But you can remember autobrakelight.com, cyclebrakelight.com.
So let's talk for a moment about cycles. got a lot of active cyclists in our area. And I read a discussion on a weblog by cyclists asking if an automatic brake light would activate when the cyclist was coasting or was momentarily slowing to shift gears. You mentioned a few minutes ago slowing to shift gears or downshifting on your motorcycle. Is there a sensitivity or tolerance for some deceleration built into the Stoptix system to allow for coasting? Or can the deceleration threshold be adjusted by the user? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so now we're kind of getting into the meat of how it works and what our triggering algorithm does. For the automotive lamp, we've taken great care in filtering out road vibration, hitting potholes, even centrifugal force contributions going around a curve in a hard turn, and incline, decline. We take all that into account, and we do that to reduce our false positives. We don't want false positives.
Right.
If the brake light comes on, it means in the vector of travel, we're indicating to the following vehicle, we have changed speed. We are slowing down. So we have to keep up with that and manage that. When we port that over to the bicycle platform, we have to adjust that threshold. It has to be a lower value. It's a lower speed vehicle, and if you're a road cyclist, you're drafting pretty closely to the person in front of you. If we dial down the deceleration trigger too low, now we get into the case where we've got false positives that's coming on all the time, and now it's not effective. It's only effective if we can indicate the deceleration. So we've reached a compromise where it's more sensitive for the bicycle version, but it's still filtering out all the rough suspension, road vibration, and giving the best information we can to the following cyclist or even a passenger vehicle if they're overtaking a bicycle.
You said that we adjust the threshold, so there's no way that the user can on their own adjust where they would like the sensitivity to be. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we certainly do not want to open that up. That is an exposure nightmare for our company.
I imagine so. That's
so as you can imagine, our product liability insurance underwriters want to see test data. They want us to basically vibrate these, do humidity, check the optical output, basically everything that makes it a brake light. And by the way, we're doing that for the bicycle product as well. It will be automotive grade, but on a bicycle platform, so it's a robust solution. So in addition to that, I would go on to say that since it's not programmable, it is very difficult to reverse engineer also. We basically load that algorithm in, and you cannot extract it. You could duplicate the circuit by identifying the components and building your own, but that's not the secret sauce. The secret sauce is all our development effort for the algorithm and how that works.
And talking about reverse engineering and competition, there are reportedly some other tail lights for bicycles and motorcycles in development or perhaps on the market that have now accelerated or incorporated accelerometers to turn on the light depending on whether or not the bike is moving. And I know in 2013 there was a Kickstarter campaign to fund a product invented in Estonia called Velodrome that uses sudden deceleration to trigger an increase in taillight brightness that warns when a cyclist is coming to a stop. And there's a similar technology in a product called Volo Lights, designed for motorcyclists, that was also raising Kickstarter funding in 2013. So could you comment for us on any competition you've uncovered to your invention and what might distinguish your product and company from competitors?
So if we didn't have any competitors, we should probably pick a different line of business. We're not intimidated by our competition. We know exactly what they're doing, and we know what we're doing different. On the motorcycle side and the vehicle side, all the prior art required you to wire your power line to the vehicle power. None of those products were self-powered. That's okay, that works great, but it's difficult to install. The key to the aftermarket use of this product is whatever vehicle you have, being able to easily install a Stoptix product without having to change your wiring, without having to run a wire to the battery, essentially. That's what Volo Lights does. It's a tag enclosure for motorcycles, and you do have to wire it to the battery. So it gets okay reviews, but they spend 2/3 of the review space in the articles talking about the difficulty of the install. I know him. I know the founder. I know the patent holder. A great guy, but he's got his work cut out for him for that product for that reason. On the bicycle side, the Velodrome, It, like so many other bicycle-like products, they love to claim the lumens. I mean, that's a big selling point for the bicyclist. But what they're not addressing is the angle output of light. So we're benefiting from our automotive lamp development in that the requirement for an automotive light is that the brake light emits light at a 90-degree angle or more. That's broader than any bicycle light that's out there. In fact, our solution, our automotive lamp, emits light at 140 degrees. That's very broad, and it's very bright. We took that same optical setup, applied it to the bicycle platform, so you're getting those 50 lumens, but you're getting 140-degree angle output also. Another thing that you won't see is what are they doing for the road vibration? No one mentions it. We're the only company talking about it, and after we've done that development, I see why. It's extremely difficult.
That's interesting. I mentioned earlier an NTSB study, and one of the causal factors in that the NTSB identified in a number of accidents involving passenger cars was that the rear following drivers was unable to get the proper perception of traffic conditions up ahead. Regardless of the individual circumstances, the drivers in these accidents were unable to detect slowed or stopped traffic and to stop their vehicles in time to prevent a rear-end collision. And I'm sure you're familiar with these studies, but according to a separate study by Daimler-Benz, if a passenger car driver had an additional half a second of warning time, about 60% of the rear-end collisions could be avoided. And an extra full second of warning time can prevent about 90% of rear-end collisions. Those numbers really startled me when I read the studies. So tell us how much time advantage your system, your StopTix system, provides, and have you validated or tested the effectiveness?
So the number that we use is 1 second earlier indication of deceleration. 1 second at 55 miles an hour is 80 feet. 80 feet of decision time for the following driver is usually enough to prevent the rear-end collision. It's just that simple, and it lines up with the statistic. What we observed on the most recent test, July 11th, we were out in Tucson at a racetrack, actually trying to figure out, can we make a race version of our automatic brake light for the vintage exotic racing community. They're basically street cars with the original lighting, and they beef them up and they dedicate them to track use. In doing that test, we got to see just how different it is when they are decelerating into a curve but have not yet applied the brakes, and we see our lights come on first. So especially for a novice driver, somebody who hasn't spent that much time on the track, getting that 1 to 1.5 second extra time to react makes a huge difference.
Sure.
That translates into normal traffic use, having that 1 second earlier. Remember, we're self-powered and we're always on and measuring, and we light up when we should. Another thing I want to point out was when we're in traffic, many times it's a 3-car accident because the middle car hit the first car because they didn't see them or weren't paying attention or just didn't have enough time to respond. In any case, they didn't hit the brakes. They didn't apply the brakes, so there was no brake light, so the car behind them hits them. We can remedy that, at least the back end, and limit that to a 2-car accident. We can't control what the driver is doing, but we can control what the vehicle is indicating.
Interesting. In a phone conversation with me earlier, you described MechOptix as a sensor company. I know you're working on the additional products beyond the StopTix light, and as I mentioned, you filed some provisional patent applications, but can you briefly tell us what you've claimed in your applications, and if your application's issue is filed, what would be your competitive advantage with these new patents plus the original IP that you've already got in place?
So our patent that was awarded on May 3rd is an automatic brake light offered as a bulb swap. It's everything all inside the lamp. That doesn't quite get us all of the market that we want, especially for heavy-duty trucking. Most of the trucking firms have already upgraded to LED lighting or are in the process of doing so now. So a bring-your-own light approach where we provide them a splice-in module that affixes to the rear of the lights that they've just installed, but turns those lights into automatic brake lights. That's one of the provisional patents that we filed. The other one is for a cycle brake light system. lack of a better name, that's our functional name for now. That is an extension of what we've learned about automatic brake light technology. And that's a system that installs on a motorcycle or a bicycle where you have a sensor transmitter unit on the handlebars and illumination receiver units and jackets, helmets, and auxiliary lighting. So everything that's an illumination unit illuminates simultaneously from the signal. But then the rider also gets a feedback, yes, I illuminated. Because you can't see behind you, and you really want to know, did this do what I thought it did? That's new, and the fact that we're doing that without tapping into the vehicle power, on a bicycle you don't have vehicle power, that is the new piece. Another extension of that, I know in this area, in the Knoxville area, people are familiar with the tail of the dragon,
right,
and how many accidents occur there. And one of the things that we looked at specifically was, if you're in an accident, tail of the dragon, and it's approaching dark, or emergency personnel couldn't find you before the light started dimming. Wouldn't it be nice if your apparel illuminated an LED beacon so that if you're in a ravine, the EMTs can find you? That's built into the cycle brake light system.
Excellent. So with the patent or intellectual property portfolio you've just described, what strategic partner or possible acquisition partner do you believe might be interested in MechOptix, and why?
So we've got three answers to that, and I'll explain each. The first is the companies that make traditional incandescent bulb lighting for automotive, like GE, Philips, Osram, Sylvania. They would be a natural fit. Basically doing in automotive what's already been done in residential overhead lighting, dragging them into the new millennium to make smart lighting instead of incandescent bulbs, or at least set up an additional product line. The second option would be the tier one suppliers for automotive. And that's companies like Federal Mogul, Magneti Marelli, Vallejo, companies who make a lot of products that go into the manufactured automobiles, including lighting. They would be a natural acquisition candidate. And then the last one is the aftermarket companies. There are companies out there, especially for heavy duty trucking, that make lights that are not vehicle specific, and they're doing quite well, such as Optronics, Truck Light, or Peterson Manufacturing. Those are the big ones. And then there's interesting things going on with collision avoidance technology with companies like Mobileye in Israel and Autoliv, which is all over the world. Those companies are really ramping up their sensor development arms in addition to their traditional product lines, so they could be a candidate to acquire us as a whole sensor company.
Excellent. This isn't your first time being instrumental in a technology-based startup company. You were a product development manager in a startup called Axometrics in the early 2000s, and an optical engineer in another startup, Optical Processing Technologies and Systems, terrible name, before that. But tell us about those experiences and how they shaped your thinking about MechOptix.
So I think it was 1999 time frame. I went to OPTS, and it was a startup, but not really. It had been in business 8 years, and they were still working on their technology. Okay. So I'm a recent graduate, and it was a great opportunity for me as a project management position. So I jumped on it, and I was like, jump in the deep end and see what happens. And I did manage the team, coordinate the efforts. We were doing optical computing using MEMS technology, micro electromechanical systems, which were, they're in prevalent use now, but in '99 it was kind of a hot topic. That didn't work out. At some point I had board members calling me and asking me president questions, and I had to remind them I'm not the president. I can answer cost and schedule on the technology. That's my game. So I count it as an experience twofold, on the engineering side and also on the business side. When we went to Axometrics, we actually had a product that we had developed in the lab while we were at JDS Uniphase. JDS Uniphase was a 30,000 employee company worldwide, and the biggest telecom components manufacturer in the world. We were actually working in Huntsville under the radar on advanced R&D for them, for components. We had developed this workhorse in the lab. We wanted to take it to market as a product. So we went up the chain at JDSU, and they said, you need to take that to Agilent. HP had just changed names to Agilent about that time. And we were thinking, we don't want to take it to Agilent. We gave you first right of refusal. So we launched a startup company developing optical test equipment based on that lab workhorse. And it was a polarimeter. It basically measures all of the elements that stack up in a computer monitor or a TV that have polarization effects. And ultimately that was to go on the production floor at places like 3M, where you've got reels of this stuff just going by, and we were doing real-time measurement of the reel. And we did get into 3M. It was a great experience.
Good for you. So, talking about manufacturing now, your initial manufacturing is going to be contract manufacturing in limited batches, if I'm correct. Tell us what you envision once you sold the first lot of your products, and how will your manufacturing requirements change? What sort of margins do you believe you'll eventually be able to maintain?
So we want to stay lean. We do not want to buy 10,000 of something and have that in inventory for 6 months while we move it and while we educate people about the product and they learn what we're offering. So we're doing small manufacturing runs. The first run we're doing in Corinth, Mississippi. After that run, we may or may not move to Asia. Still working. I'm still beating up the Chinese and the Taiwanese on pricing. But the goal for MechOptix is to remain a design entity. We are a powerhouse of sensor product development. We will have to go to production in some volume to show that there's market traction, there's interest in the product, but we are never going to establish manufacturing capability in-house. We want to have a contract manufacturer make them by the tens of thousands, or we can license it out to somebody who's already in the market.
So what will it take for your company to be profitable? I mean, how much margin expansion, if any, do you require to get to profitability? Will you lose money on the individual unit sales that need to be made up on volume? I mean, how do you see getting to profitability?
Yeah, so the first runs, the margins aren't that great. They're around 40%. When we get the volume up around the 10,000 unit each order, US or Taiwan, then we start seeing the significant reduction. So we can get a profit margin over 50%, almost 60%, if we can do those batch sizes in the contract manufacturing. Basically, it gets down to a few things. It's the electronics industry, so volume is key to reducing cost of goods. But also, we're using the latest technology. That's what enables this thing. 3 years ago, we could not have made this lamp. So we're still kind of at the front end of the product life cycle on some of the components that go into our lamp. That means we're still paying a little bit of a premium. Right. So not only do we get the volume price break on contract manufacturing, we also get the product life cycle fall off in component pricing, because it won't be cutting edge next year or the year after, but we don't have any reason to upgrade to the latest. It's bright, it's plenty fast. We make this as long as they make the parts.
We always say you like to be on the leading edge, not the bleeding edge. You don't want to be too far.
We are close to the bleeding edge, but that's what makes this thing work. So,
I know you touched on it a few minutes ago, but I'd like to get back to it very quickly. What about product liability? When you claim that a brake light or a tail light is automated, are there inherent risks that accidents could be claimed to have occurred because your system didn't provide warning as advertised?
I think anytime you make a claim that bold, you do have to be very concerned about your exposure. What the underwriters have told us is if this lamp illuminates as fast or faster than the incandescent you're replacing, it works every time the brakes are applied. If you qualify that as an automotive product, which means optical color, optical power, vibration environment, and humidity, it is a brake light. If they're underwriting it, I'm happy.
There you go. And is there anything else that we overlooked today, or that I should have asked but I didn't? I'll give you the last word.
I think we covered it. I want to go back and rehash one thing just for emphasis.
Sure.
MechOptix is a sensor company. Our first line of products is automatic brake lights. That's what we're familiar with. We've taken that one idea as a replacement smart lamp and expanded on that, expanding our IP, expanding our product line, and we've got market pull for all of that. We're not making any of this up or sitting around in a boardroom somewhere. What do we need to work on next? We've got more market pull than we've got resources to address. It's a great position to be in. It's a great space to be in. But beyond automatic brake lights, we want to do additional work in sensors. We would love to get into collision avoidance for the aftermarket. I love the Mercedes S-Class, and I love the technology that comes in that car new. but I can't afford one. And none of my neighbors can afford one, and no one on my team can afford one. So what can we do? If we can offer collision avoidance technologies that are retrofit, they fit into the vehicle you already have. And by the way, the average American vehicle age is 11 years. We're still not buying new vehicles. We're trying to preserve the ones we've got. That's the real opener. That's the real key to rapidly getting market share in an underserved market. It's the retrofit space for collision avoidance. All the emphasis now is on new cars.
Right.
That's great, but that's years in the making, and it doesn't service everyone. And then I do want to throw out, we've got a great product that as soon as we have the resources to work on it, we will. It's a fiber optic brake sensor for primarily for the heavy duty trucking market. In real time, it measures brake pad wear and temperature. So if you're going downhill in the truck, you get an indicator, it turns yellow, you're getting hot, turns red, let off the brakes. The thing about brakes is once you reach 1600 degrees Celsius, they start shedding and they never recover. They're done. On the condition-based maintenance side, the fleet manager will get information via the telematics system they're already using. These brake pads need replacing. They have this much wear, and they can get that on whatever interval they want daily if they like. So that's on the horizon. We'd love to work on that project.
I hope you do. It's interesting you mentioned the collision avoidance, because my wife this year got a new Ford car that has some of these collision avoidance features that none of our earlier cars had. Not just the backup camera, but the side view mirrors have little indicator lights when somebody's in your blind spot, and there's a warning tone that happens when the car approaches either an obstacle in front or on the sides. And you don't know you'd like these things until you drive a car with them, and then you realize, boy, how did I live without this? Because they're very helpful. So you're absolutely right. There are older model cars that don't have them, that once drivers start becoming accustomed in one car in their family, they may well want to retrofit or go back and get it in all their cars.
I think the key is ease of use.
Yeah.
If you can make the additional information easily accessible, very useful to the driver, they will use it. I know in one case for lane departure systems, that didn't do as well as the industry thought. The drivers are actually turning those systems off because they hear it screaming at them every time they want to pass someone. So some things work, some things don't. But if you think about the operation of it from the driver's perspective, there's a lot of solutions to be had out there, and it's a great space to be in.
Great. Jeff Hammock of MechOptix, thanks for spending time with ACG today. It's been very informative, and I'll remind our audience that this fireside chat with MechOptix and their funding pitch will be available for viewing using the member password on Vimeo. Jeff, thanks again, and thanks to all the Angel Capital Group for watching. Until next time, happy returns.